journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events live as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Good evening, Malcontents, and welcome to another episode of Malcontentment Happy Hour for Monday, January 11th, 2021. And January 2021 is living up to my lowest of expectation. It's not COVID, I promise. Is living up to my lowest of expectations. And has totally gone, hold my beer and watch this when we compare it to 2020. I would like to introduce my wonderful and amazing co-host, Jennifer Smith. Jennifer, how are you doing this evening?
I'm surviving the year so far. It feels like it's been going for more than, like 11 days or whatever.
It was just last week on tonight. We were wondering if there was going to be Insurrection on Wednesday, and we guessed right. It's our mad deep state sills, apparently. We have a great audience tonight. First thing I want to say is this. This is how you can help the Malcontentment News. You can like, follow, subscribe, but more importantly, particularly if you're on Facebook, you can start a watch party or you can share. If you're on Twitter or Periscope, you can retweet what you're watching out and help amplify the voices that we work to amplify. Jennifer, it's another Manic Monday from a news cycle standpoint, isn't it?
Unfortunately, yes. It's been like an onslaught of incoming news all day long.
And the first thing that we're going to do, Jennifer, is we're going to go ahead and intro the land acknowledgement, and then we're going to turn it over to you. Jennifer, are you there? I know it looks like we're having a little. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Whatever you're ready to start. Sorry. You're a little frozen on the screen. You're a little choppy tonight. It doesn't look like you've got good bandwidth again. I know we had this issue on Thursday, so.
Yeah. So we would like to acknowledge the Fairfield peoples of this land, the land which touches the fair waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Puyallup, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckish Nations. And this is the land where we live, work, and report the news from.
Jennifer, thank you so much for that. All right, we're just going to jump into it. There is no story zero tonight because it's like, It's just been breaking news. And with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into story number one. Story number one takes us to our neighboring town of Sammamish, Washington. When I say our, I mean Malcontentment News, neighboring town of Sammamish, Washington. And it also takes us to Henderson, Nevada, and this company called Parler. Parler has made news over the last half a year as a alternative social media site, if you want to call it that, as much as Gab or 4chan or Stormfront is an alternative social media site. Parler peddled themselves past tense as a site where there was no moderation, that free speech is totally respected. You can do whatever you want on there. And what's happened is they've had a couple of embarrassing security breaches. They lowered the drawbridge even more on, we're going to go ahead and let people say what they want. And they had a flood of hardcore porn. And interestingly, because a lot of QAnon followers like to go there, there was some child porn and some other stuff floating around on there. But I digress. Parler has had one hell of a 96 hours. So let's recap for you, Malcontents. And all of this is up on our website at Malcontent News. Some of you may be watching us tonight for the first time because you were introduced to us through the website and that story that is really blown up today. So on Wednesday, we had the insurrection. We'll talk about that later on. On Thursday, Donald Trump issued a series of tweets that resulted in a 12-hour ban by Twitter and a 24-hour ban on Facebook. In order for Trump to get back on the air, Jennifer, he had to delete those 3 tweets. And that's what he did. And he got back on the air. And then he immediately went back in fanning the flames of insurrection. And so he was booted from Twitter permanently. And then a little while later from Facebook and from Instagram. And so all of the followers said, okay, we're going to go to Parler. And Parler became the #1 downloaded app on Google Play, Apple Store. And the site actually crashed from all of the traffic. Now, Jennifer, here's the amazing part. The people in Parler it wasn't because of the traffic and all the people signing up. No. That's not what the problem. The government was out to get them. That's why all of that was going on. And there was some wild stuff coming out of Parler over like that 48-hour window. Like the forced update on Apple devices was to disable the emergency broadcast system nationally. Okay. The server outages that we're seeing at Parler was just part of a 24-hour shutdown coming of the entire internet so that the deep state could control everything. Okay, that didn't happen either. And then the companies that support Parler started lining up. It was first Google. Google kicked them off of the store. Then Apple said, you got 24 hours to stop moderating or we're going to kick you out of the store. They kicked them out of the store. Then Amazon, who they host on, said, you got 24 hours to find someone else to serve. We're done. And not to mention, under this backdrop, Donald Trump managed to basically get banned from every social media platform out there, including Pinterest. Jennifer, how do you get banned from Pinterest?
I don't know. I just want to see what his boards look like. Was it like how to build your dream coup? I think it's important to know too that like even though he was banned on Twitter, he went to several of the other accounts and tried to retweet and they banned those too.
He went to 5 other accounts, including the official government POTUS Twitter account. And those tweets were pulled down about as fast as he could put them up. And it turns out that Twitter was the one yanking them down. Although I really have to wonder how much coordination was going on with the government and the White House at the time on that.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I don't know. And then this whole moving the Parler and the crazy conspiracy theories that are coming out of that, and then it landing in a company based in Washington is pretty astounding.
It is. And so the train wreck accelerated on Sunday. So Parler on Saturday, their executive team was very defiant. We have people lining up to work with us and we're going to be fine. And then by Sunday morning, they were like, everybody has left, even our lawyers, which I find interesting because I'm sure Sidney Powell or Rudy Giuliani or Lynn Wood would love to be their attorneys. But I guess the folks at Parler didn't feel they were qualified. We don't know. I'm speculating.
It's entirely possible, but haven't, proven themselves to be the most successful lawyers based on their recent legal endeavor.
And then Lynn Wood did a parlay. If you're not familiar with Parler, a parlay is equal to a tweet. And in there, he called for direct violence against Mike Pence. I'm not going to repeat what they said there because the AI bots that monitor this stuff on the social will take us off the air. It's friggin' awful what he said. It was so awful, Jennifer. Oh, come on. You're supposed to go, how awful was it? This has got to be a critical phone call. Do I need to hit technical difficulties?
Yes, please. We can't hear Jennifer.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Okay, thank you. Jennifer, we're having technical difficulties. Hey, Jennifer, could you do me a favor?
Yes.
Could you give the whole world a 10 count and let's see if they can actually hear you this time? Because apparently nobody's been able to hear you this whole time.
Oh, wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All right, Malcontents, let us know. Can you hear Jennifer? We have to wait for the that to go out into the world. Everyone says excellent now and yay. This is what we're going to do, Malcontents, and thank you for all of your amusement here. We're going to go all the way back to the land acknowledgement. We're going to kind of gloss over the Parler story. Jennifer, I'm going to re-roll the intro to the land acknowledgement. We're just going to start over there. We'll do it for Rashi. Rashi, this is for you. This is the joy of live production. Jennifer, if you could go ahead with the land acknowledgement again, this time where everybody could hear it.
Okay, so we at Malcontent News, because we are in Seattle, Washington, would like to acknowledge the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Duwamish, Puyallup, Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations, where we live, work, and bring you the news.
Jennifer, thank you very much. And yes, we are aware that Jennifer's video is like 1 frame per 30 seconds. And I don't know what to tell y'all. This is the joy of live production in the age of COVID. We don't have an engineer in the room, and Jennifer has to be remote because of COVID. And this is one of the joys of it. One day we'll all be able to be in the room together, including having an engineer back here in the studio. It'll all be better. So with that, let me go back into Parler. A lot of you have heard my half of the story. Jennifer, let's go back to my initial question, which was, how bad was it? And of course, Jennifer said, how bad was it? And my response is, it was so bad that Parler, which is professed to doing no censorship, took Linwood tweets down, or parlay down, I shouldn't say tweet, but took the parlay down, which is pretty stunning. And we also have learned, and we'll get into that a little bit more later tonight, that Linwood is under investigation with the Secret Service.
Yep.
My understanding is that Spec, aka Speculation, is very amused by this because a certain Safe Seattle asshole called the Secret Service on Spec 2 years ago, and for something actually far less than what Linwood said. And Spec had a conversation with the Secret Service over it.
Interesting. Yeah, crazy times on Parler.
So Parler went off the air a little after midnight, our time, on Monday. I know a bunch of people were like, refresh, to see it go off the air. And then our research team discovered something late this morning. Parler had found a new home with Epic Software based in Sammamish, Washington. Epic Software hosts wonderful sites like Gab, Stormfront, and I believe 4chan. They also host Antifa Watch.
Wow. It's a good group of, sites to host there, huh?
They are consistent. Now, they have the domain, right? So they are now the domain of the DNS holder of record. And we know that they have hosting capabilities because of those sites that I just rattled off that they hosted. However, because all of their infrastructure was built on AWS, this isn't exactly a flip the switch to just, okay, we're just going to throw this in some other servers and away we go. And the other thing is that the infrastructure problems that they're going to have, I'm coming from the tech industry and actually having some time at two of the large tech companies here, they're going to have like this real burst, right? If the lights go back on, because everybody's whoosh going to rush back onto there. And they're going to have the flexible bandwidth to deal with that initial spike because the traffic will invariably go down. I know some chuds.
It's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller.
Are going to say, no, that's not true. The traffic won't. No, that's just the way things go. Everybody's going to go ahead and rush into there. And then it's just going to slow. That's invariable with every app, with any kind of social platform. You have all the people come back, but then you're not going to have everybody just obsessively posting on there like Donald Trump. Not that Donald Trump posts on there. I'm using it as an analogy. So Parler is not dead yet, to kind of paraphrase Microsoft. Monty Python. I'm getting better. So we'll just see what happens there, Jennifer.
Yeah, I guess so. It's the one platform he hasn't been banned from, so I'm surprised he's not on there.
Well, he's not banned from D Live. That's where all the streamers go to die. If you're a streamer, you've been kicked off of every other respectful platform, you end up over at D Live. I think we've beat this dead horse into the ground twice. We will definitely follow the story out of Sammamish and Epic Software. And with that, Jennifer, we're going to go on to story number 2. Before I jump into story number 2, I want to say, because you can actually thank our community manager for bailing my ass out earlier today. If you love our mods and admins, and you should really love them tonight in particular, go ahead and spam those hearts. If you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, on Periscope, just go on the heart icon, because our mods and admin team are paid in hearts. Who am I kidding? Nobody gets paid to do any of this around here. And that is what fuels them and keeps them going. If you're watching on YouTube or Twitch and you're like, I can't do a big thing spammy of hearts, then you could just type in like, I love you mods, or do a big long line of hearts in there to make them happy. This is an evolving story. We reported on this story on Friday night. We also have this up in Malcontent News. And this story, Jennifer, has gotten a little bit worse in the last 12 hours based on Chief Diaz's press conference that he had earlier today. What I want to do is go ahead, give a tiny bit of background on where we are on Friday, and then I'm going to roll the Diaz clip.
Okay.
So on Friday, we learned that 2 police officers with the Seattle Police Department were identified as being in Washington, D.C. for the insurrection. Now, we don't know if they were directly involved in the insurrection. We don't know if they were on Capitol grounds, etc. And we learned on Friday night that they are suspended, of course, with pay, and it's been referred to OPA. Now, for our national audience, if you're not familiar with Seattle, if you're not familiar with OPA, OPA is the Office of Police Accountability. And quite frankly, with most citizens of the city of Seattle, the OPA probably has about as much credibility as a dog catcher claiming that they would be kind with the stray dogs in the neighborhood, which is to say almost none. Sorry, OPA. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. And kind of the immediate feeling that came out on Friday was, these guys are going to enjoy a 6 to 12 month vacation while this drags out because they're getting paid. And maybe they'll get a letter of reprimand or something, or they're just going to hope that everyone forgets, because that's kind of how OPA rolls. And even if OPA comes back and says terminates them, the Seattle Police Officers Guild is unbelievably powerful here in Seattle, which will make it even more challenging to get them booted out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's been particularly problematic in the context of like the response to it thus far. And I know you're going to roll the Diaz clip, and we're going to talk about Mike Solon too. But yeah, the number of not just in Seattle, but actual police officers and other high-ranking people that they're actually finding were involved in the insurrection is really quite troubling.
It is. And what we're learning tonight is that there are multiple officers from multiple police agencies, both small and large, that tonight are suspended or reassigned or under investigation. I'm going to go ahead and roll the Diaz clip to get into the point, because remember we said it was 2. Well, yeah. Can't say I'm surprised what Diaz had to say about it this morning.
As we stated on Friday, we were made aware through a member of the department that they saw social media pictures of other SPD officers, apparently in Washington, D.C., the day of the attack on the U.S. Capitol building. After receiving the photos, I shared them late Thursday night with the Office of Police Accountability's Director, Meyerberg, and asked him to review. On Friday, when it was clear an investigation would be needed to determine if they did or did not participate in the violent events or any violations of federal law, I decided it was essential to our commitment to transparency and enhancing public trust that we share this information with the community. I cannot go into the details of the investigation now that is under the purview of the OPA, but I can clarify a few points. When I referred it to the OPA, it was not apparent exactly where the photo was taken or if those in the photo took any part in attacking the U.S. Capitol. I placed identified officers on administrative leave because of the significance of what occurred in Washington, D.C. I did this considering that participating in a political event on their own time, out of uniform, violates no policy or law. I do not want to limit anyone's ability to lawfully participate in First Amendment activities. The large number of people who forced their way into the Capitol connected to the earlier political rally presented too much of the unknown about whether any of our employees had potentially violated federal law. That is why I had to act. Given the seriousness of what took place, out of an abundance of caution, I asked OPA to conduct an investigation. If OPA finds any evidence any officers were directly involved, they will be fired, and the information will be shared with federal officials. I made it very clear when I assumed this position that any violation of community trust or any action that threatens our ability to serve this city will be met with full accountability. We cannot violate the same laws we are sworn to protect. We cannot allow violent or intimidating direct action to become acceptable in our society. If any SPD employee participated directly in assaulting the U.S. Capitol, I will terminate them. That is an important point to end this part of the press event on. This department does not believe in or support this type of behavior.
Malcontent Ian has the comment of the night so far. His question to Chief Diaz, Jennifer, was, isn't attending a protest that turns violent just become then your approval of the violence of that protest? Because that's what Seattle police and the Seattle police supporters have been arguing since May 30th.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to me, too, that these people are on administrative leave rather than being immediately terminated for, attending a violent insurrection meant to overthrow the government. Regardless of whether you went there to protest whatever, that's what it turned into. And that was the intent of, as we've seen, they had shirts made. They were, preparing to go to civil war. It just seems very, very troubling to me that you're basically going to get a slap on the hand for trying to overthrow the government and being in a position where you police the public.
Well, the SPA contract, right, prevents the termination of that. They have created all of these layers and machines that make it very, very hard to fire a police officer. A couple of things that jumped out at me, too, is that we went from 2, right? We had a specific number 2 to now the number has gone to several. Now, the AP style guide says a couple is 2, a few is 3, several is 4, and anything over 4 is many. And so I would think anybody who wrote that speech for Chief Diaz would at least know, Chicago style or AP style, and so I'm kind of feeling like, okay, several. So we've gone from 2 to 4. I also found it interesting that their own officers turned them in, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, no, that is particularly interesting that, they got turned in by people that they work with, by their peers, which I guess in a way is a good thing that they're trying to root that kind of behavior out within the department. So I will be like you and give them that little tiny bit of credit. But, it's turned from 2 to several of over like the course of a couple of days. So how many more are potentially involved in this?
And that's what I'm wondering. The other thing that I wonder where their own officers said, hey, this is a problem. It makes me think that this isn't like, 4 people standing out, because some people were all the way up by the Washington Monument where the speeches were going on. And if you're not familiar with the show, I will play devil's advocate for anybody. And I could see, say, somebody who was down by the Washington Monument and then after, or down by like where Trump's speech was, and said like, all right, fine, I've had enough happy horse shit, I'm going home, or going back in my car, could totally have gotten home and go, what do you mean there was what? And then like turned on the news and gone, holy shit, what the hell happened? My point is this. I don't think that this was just like 4 people going, hi, we're at the Washington Monument, a big Trump rally. I don't think that's what's in the picture, because I don't see somebody going, hey, this is a problem. If it's just kind of 4 people in head to toe Trump regalia or something at, again, out by the Washington Monument or something.
But then that, again, begs the question, if they have, like somehow they've been rooted out, they've had their peers turn on them and say, hey, this is, an issue. They attended this and were part of this insurrection. Why are they receiving administrative leave? And is it administrative paid leave? They're
getting paid.
Yeah. And that to me that's disgusting that you would be put on administrative leave for that and still be getting paid, which speaks to bigger issues about how difficult it is to actually remove a police officer who's expressing explicit bias from their position of power.
And with that, all I could say is we'll keep monitoring that story, because I'm sure that as that onion gets peeled, it's going to get more rotten as we go down into the core.
Well, yes, it will.
And with that, we're going to do a little pause for the cause, and then we're going to jump right back on in.
Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events live as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals, including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
Hi, Malcontents. I'm David, the Malcontent, and I'd like to talk to you for a moment about supporting independent media. When you support us, you help us bring the before, during, and after. You help us defend the First Amendment. You help us amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices, and you help us hold leaderships at a local, state, and federal level accountable. None of this would be possible without support by viewers just like you. When you become a patron for as little as $5 a month, you help buy technology, safety equipment, and help cover travel expenses so that we can continue to bring you news that you trust. If you can't become a patron, you can do a one-time donation on Venmo, and your dollars will go to the exact same causes. With your continued support, we can continue to amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices while showing the truth on what is happening in the world around us. Once again, thank you. Jennifer, on this story, I have to go. I'm out. Because journalistic integrity says I'm out on this one. For our national audience, if you're not familiar with the story, Jennifer will probably go a little bit into the story, but this is her story. And with that, Jennifer, it is all you.
So, as of this evening, Seattle City Council has asked for Seattle Police Officers Guild President Mike Solin's resignation after pushing far-right conspiracy theories in the wake of the insurrection at the nation's capital last week, claiming that Antifa was behind the attack. He cited and retweeted a tweet by conservative journalist Andy Ngo, who Solon deems reliable, and that pins some blame for the insurrection on John Sullivan, who Ngo claims is a BLM and Antifa activist. A claim, by the way, that has been discredited by sources such as PolitiFact, which is linked in the story on Malcontent News. Solon continued his problematic pattern of behavior on Twitter that is both unprofessional and unbecoming for the leader of a police union. So as many of our viewers are well aware, Solon was called out last year for harassing a certain journalist that dropped their press pass outside of a SPOG protest last September in Seattle. And numerous complaints were made to OPA, where he remains under investigation. So among those immediately calling on Solon to retract, apologize, and or resign were former SPD Chief Carmen Best, Seattle City Attorney Scott Lindsay, followed shortly after by MLK Labor and the Washington Fraternal Order of Police, which actually accused Solon of being biased. Interestingly, however, when SPD Chief Adrian Diaz was asked about Solon in a news conference that we just watched part of, He chose to punt and instead insisted that because he is the police chief and not Solon, he would address SPD officers alleged to have participated in the insurrection accordingly. But because Solon is president, he still has to essentially work with him.
Do you want me to play that clip?
Yes.
We have that clip. I can play it for you. We're going to roll the clip.
I run the police department, and I want to make that clear. Mike Solon does not run the police department. He oversees the union that does look at wages, working conditions, and benefits. And if there are statements that do challenge the levels of trust with our community, but let's realize that I actually run the department, and I am going to make sure that I hold officers accountable for any action that is not in the same values of our police department. But I know every day officers are doing amazing work, and I believe that all they want to do is just serve this community to the best of their ability, and that's what we're committed to.
Will you be able to work with Mike Solon moving forward?
He is the union president at this time, and I will be working with Mike Solon to address any other things that we need to do as a city, as a department.
All right, Jennifer, back to you.
Well, you can see Diaz gets a little bit defensive about it, but then, talks about how he's going to have to, work with Solon. So he essentially just punts on the question and doesn't really give a direct response. But Solon is also, bad timing, recently gave an interview with far-right wing political group where he lamented DOJ consent decrees and attributed them to Democrats being in power. So quite frankly, the claims of Solon's bias are not unwarranted, based both on his very public statements on Twitter and the fact that he has appeared several times on Fox News, including on the Tucker Carlson show. And as we know, Carlson is no stranger to pushing far-right conspiracy theories, including attributing violence perpetrated by far-right extremists to BLM and Antifa, as well as challenging 2020 election results. So here's hoping that Mike Solon learns that actions have consequences instead of doubling down on false statements like he has in the past. Wink, wink, nod, nod. You're a little familiar with that. Does the right thing and actually hands in his resignation as the Seattle City Council has asked.
And my guess on that is going to be no. Although some would immediately go, "You're biased on that." If I go from personal experience, Mike Solon is under investigation for OPA for actions that he took against an unnamed journalist on September 7th. And that investigation is at 75% done, according to the protesters' dashboard. But he insisted in an interview broadcasted on Como News on September 10 that he is not apologizing. He's not taking down that particular Twitter fiasco for him. And quite frankly, my view, and I'll skate the line here, I think his actions in September compound the situation that he is in now, if somebody is looking at that from City Hall.
Absolutely. And I think it's just so unprofessional and such an unbecoming way for him to behave when he's leading a, police officers guild that has been repeatedly called out for excessive use of force, repeatedly called out for racial bias, and then to basically defend the insurrection and try and displace the blame and put it on Antifa, and just really double down on these conspiracy theories is such a huge red flag for where the state of Seattle police are right now. Not to mention the fact that we have several, which could become many any day, SPD officers that were involved in the insurrection in some capacity. This does not bode well, nor does it, reinforce in any way the people's faith, the community's faith in their police officers.
No, it doesn't. And there's a history in the city that has been really exposed of the Seattle Police Department driving misinformation. They were the ones who spread the rumor that the Proud Boys were coming to shoot up the place on June 8th after the
Yeah.
East Precinct was evacuated. They the ones that started the false rumor that businesses and people living in the, at that time it was called Chaz, but in the Chop Chaz area, were being shaken down for protection and extortion money. On June 12th, they walked the story back, and just last Friday afternoon, it was reported in The Stranger that the Seattle Police Department went, yeah, we made that story up. And it's not lost on me, on somebody who has had a marketing career for like 20 years. When you have bad news, stuff that makes you look bad, you release that on a Friday afternoon in the hope that it goes to die over the weekend before it gets to the Monday news cycle.
Yep, exactly. And I don't know. It's just, there's so little faith in the Seattle Police Department right now by much of the community. This doesn't help. Solon continuously doubling down, and it's obvious that he has a particular bias that fundamentally impacts the way he runs the guild, and the kinds of things that are, I guess, essentially allowed to occur within that. The excessive use of force, all of the kinds of targeting of particular groups like BLM and Antifa, while he's out there peddling these right-wing conspiracy theories on Twitter for the world to see, but he hasn't suffered any real repercussions for his actions. And until that happens, he's just going to continue to be emboldened and to continue to behave this way because nobody's come down on him and said, hey, this isn't something that you should be doing, and there are consequences for doing this.
Well, according to the Seattle Times, in 2020, when they voted for their union president, 750 police officers voted. Over 500, so 66.6% or more, voted for Mike Solon. So this isn't just representative of the brain of Mike Solon. This is representative of the esprit de corps within the Seattle Police Department, because otherwise they wouldn't have picked him as their boy. They don't get to vote for the chief, but they do get to vote for their union leaders.
Yeah, and that is wherein the problem lies, right? To support him understanding who he is, and he's been very public about who he is and what he stands for, that speaks to a bigger issue that just goes down the line in the police department. So, and I'm a little bit, interested to know what kind of repercussions the people that actually went out of their way to report their fellow officers that had gone to this insurrection might, have fall on them. So it's just a very interesting thing. And I hope, like I said, that he has some kind of change of heart and does the right thing and resigns. But I'm with you that he's going to double down on this. He's going to, latch on to this whole free speech thing that's so popular with the far right-wing extremists. And he's just going to continue to be the same person he is.
The other thing I found interesting is in Chief Diaz's statement, he said twice, I run the police department. Which to me, if I read body language and if I read the words, tells me that he's in a power struggle with Mike Solon. Why would he have to declare that twice within 90 seconds?
And he was very defensive about that fact. So, yeah, I thought that was particularly interesting too.
So who's really the captain of the ship, right?
Exactly. Especially
Jennifer, thank you so much for the report. Mod's admin team, could you put in the chat the direct link from Malcontent News? Because I saw lots of people in the comments going, I have links to the tweet, I have links to that tweet, I have links to this picture. It's all up on the story at malcontentnews.com. So if one of the mods and admins can go and link to the Mike Solon story up in our chat, that way, then the malcontents can go ahead and read the story and see the tweets for themselves. The other thing is that we haven't even talked about is John Sullivan, which is at the center of the sun of all of this controversy.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because he's the one that, of course, there was the big theory that somehow he was in charge of what was going on at the insurrection and that he is linked to BLM and Antifa. Which, again, if you look at the PolitiFact link in the article, read the article. It's great, people. This has been, basically been discredited. Yeah.
In that same story, we have a link to tremendous research that has been done about John Sullivan. And John Sullivan is not Antifa. And John Sullivan, by the way, is not a right-wing chud either. John Sullivan is John Sullivan, and he is in it for John Sullivan. And there are people on the right in their protest movement that hates his guts. There are people on the left that don't want him around and hate his guts also. We are working with a couple of organizations and some journalists down where John Sullivan lives in the Salt Lake City area. And we are hoping that we can do an expose on John Sullivan later this week. Stay tuned for that. We're working on it. The news cycle is nuts. We're trying. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and roll to our fourth story, Jennifer, and the last story. Couple of things before we jump into our last story. Number one, if you really want to support us, one of the easiest way to do it, and it's totally free, you can like, follow, subscribe. If you are watching us on Facebook, you can share or start a watch party. I always tell this to the right-wing chuds. You want to have your little hate fest in your comments? You can do it. What you do is you set up a watch party, and our mods and admins can't see your comments. Of course, none of us can see your comments, but you could be in your little echo chamber saying just how awful and stupid we are, and we get the eyeballs. If you're on Twitter or Periscope, you can go ahead and tweet out and say, hey, wow, this is actually pretty interesting stuff. Feed your head holes. The next thing is our mods and admin teams, they are paid with hearts. Nobody's making money around here. And the way that we pay our mods and admins is with hearts. So if you're on Facebook, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Periscope in particular, take those hearts and it lets them know that the mods and admins appreciate the work that you're doing. And it also helps with the algorithm. Sure, it's I'll be naked about it. If you're on Twitch or if you're watching us on YouTube right now, and there's no hearts. You could just I love you mods, or put a big lower hearts or something like that on there. So those are easy ways that you could support us. Jennifer, we're back. Oh my goodness! You have the notes. I had to print them out, but you have the notes here. We have it this was getting worked on right up to about 10 minutes before the show here. So, Jennifer, what we'll do here is we'll just flip back and forth. I'll start with the breaking,
Okay.
and then you could just move to the next section, and then we'll just flip back and forth through here.
Okay.
All right. So the breaking news. What we have for breaking news right before we went on the air. Number one, Trump is signaling he isn't going to resign. I don't think anyone's surprised by that. And Mike Pence has signaled he's not going to do the 25th Amendment. Mike Pence over the weekend said, Jennifer, he wants to wait to see maybe if it gets a little more unstable before using the 25th Amendment. But we have a little bit later in this section on why it actually may be kind of hard for Mike Pence to execute the 25th Amendment. So those are kind of the two breaking things that were popping out right before we went on the air. And then the other piece of breaking news, Jennifer, I'm going to hand it over to you, is this declaration of a state of emergency.
The declaration of a state of emergency. The declaration frees up Department of Homeland Security and FEMA to support the city in any emergency response. And over 6,000 National Guard troops are already authorized for DC support. I'm talking about Washington, DC here for the inauguration and whatever is potentially going to happen before then. And the Pentagon and police officials are scrambling to identify officers and service members who may be aligned with far-right organizations, surprise, surprise, and ideology before 119.
Yeah, it's because of a growing list, and we're going to get into that in this section, the growing list of officers, the growing list of military officers that were potentially directly involved in the insurrection. There are concerns that there may be people that intend harm for the 46th president that is incoming that will be in a position where they could be in a position of trust, where they could either let people in to commit harm or they themselves can commit the harm.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And yes, I'm choosing my words carefully. AI bots that are listening.
But
all right. Next thing we're going to talk about here is heroes. And one hero that we want to talk about here is Officer Eugene Goodman. Eugene Goodman was an officer that was shown in the video who was running up the stairs being chased by an angry mob. And he was being chased in particular by QAnon follower Doug Jensen. We're going to get into QAnon follower Doug Jensen a little bit later here. But this is like one of the most famous and infamous videos of that day, where Officer Goodman is armed only with the baton, and he pauses every now and then and kind of threatens with the baton and then retreats, and then pauses again and retreats. When Officer Goodman reached the point of stairs, he turned and glanced, realized that the Senate chamber was completely unsecured. There was literally no officers, no security there. We're going to get into a rabbit hole on that one tonight, because there's some interesting shit that went down this weekend on that story. And Officer Goodman risking his own life, putting his life over, not only life over country, but life over people that, quite frankly, like Josh Hawley, that probably would have preferred to see him dead, to be really blunt about it, led these insurrectionists down a different hallway. By the time that they figured out that, like, hey, wait a minute, we're going the wrong way, and they went back in, the Senate chamber was cleared. Jennifer, they say that the last person left that room less than 60 seconds before the insurrectionists came in. Eugene Goodman is a flippin' hero.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and for the way in which some of those officers behaved and were taking selfies with insurrectionists and, just basically letting them walk all over the top of the stuff, for him to stand out like that, that's, a pretty heroic deed, and he deserves whatever accolades come of that.
It is beyond shameful, but of what I have learned in my journey starting in 2020, for some reason, I'm not shocked that when it comes to the actions of National Guard and police officers, we are literally only hearing one story of incredible bravery. Just about every other story we're hearing out of Washington, D.C. is a horrific dereliction of duty.
Exactly.
And again, I have to ask the question, how come people like John Kennedy, Josh Hawley, Lindsey Graham, why did they evacuate? Why didn't they stick around to hear the grievances of their constituents who, as Chief Diaz claimed, were using their First Amendment rights?
Yeah. First Amendment right, I don't think covers smashing in windows and, threatening to execute public officials, but okay. Yeah, I don't know.
Qualify smashing windows, what you mean there, because I know that some chuds are going to jump on that. What you mean is smashing the windows to try to get into the Senate and House chambers to murder people. We're not talking about smashing. We're not talking about I'm going to smash just this random window of a closed store, for example. It is not. It is not on the same plane.
No, it was the intent to murder public officials. And that was very clear because there's videos of them out talking about executing, there were people that were there with the intent of hanging public officials. So no confusion, chuds. This was very clear intent.
And just to qualify also, we're not advocates of breaking shit, because I don't want people to run with that either. I just don't want the false moral equivalency. That's all.
Yes. No whataboutisms tonight. Thank you.
I got to run the chud clip.
Chud. Cannibalistic, humanoid, underground dwellers.
You're not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
Oh my goodness, that clip from that movie Falling Down has aged so well in the age of 2021. All right, so I guess we flip back over to me. And we're going to be talking about 25th Amendment, Jennifer. On the 25th Amendment, Pence and Cabinet were given 24 hours to execute the 25th Amendment against Trump. That clock started running yesterday. Nancy Pelosi has recalled the House back to Washington, D.C. To go ahead and vote on this matter. They're going to vote tomorrow, Jennifer, for execution of the 25th Amendment. They have a Democratic majority. It's going to pass with no problem. I think the bigger question is going to be, how many Republicans are going to cross the line. My guess is not a lot, because apparently we're pro overthrowing the government that they work for, or more like I'm pro murdering this person on the other side of the aisle. I'm sorry, I'm just calling as I see it, folks. Even if the 25th Amendment is issued, Pence never will become president. I think that's something that people misunderstand. I see a whole lot of, well, I don't want it because Pence will become president. He can pardon Trump. He would only become the acting president. What would happen is, if Pence and the cabinet were to sit down and say, okay, 25th Amendment, we'll get into what needs to happen for that. And they say, okay, they send a letter to Congress and the president going, dude, 25th Amendment. Now, President Donald Trump has the ability to go, smoke you. You can't do 25th Amendment. And then the cabinet and Pence need to sit down and they need to vote again. And then it's either, whoops, we made a mistake, sorry, or it's going to be, no, we really mean it. You can't be president. At that moment, Mike Pence becomes the acting president of the United States. Donald Trump is still, like, from history books and the count or whatever, is still 45th. There is no 46th. Congress then has 21 days to hear Trump's case on why he shouldn't be subject to the 25th Amendment. But the reality is, Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats, if that happens, can just take a knee. Right, if I use the football metaphor, they don't have to hear the case at all. Now, here's the challenge that Mike Pence has. It requires a majority of the cabinet. And we had 2 cabinet members cowardly decide last week that they're going to resign. If you are an acting cabinet member, you have no say. Only, not certified, only, I guess I will use the word certified, but only cabinet members that have been certified by the Senate can participate that. But what Donald Trump has done to circumvent that and put people in who are sycophants and totally unqualified for the roles is he's just making them acting. And so they don't have a vote. And so the people now that are kind of left on the cabinet that have been confirmed, it's like down in the bunker with with Crazy Adolf there, right? And it's Goebbels and team, right?
Yep. So, I mean, like, we're all been hoping that 25th Amendment, he's, done until the 46th president can be sworn in, but it doesn't look like there's any possibility that that's going to happen. Pence has been, for the most part, it was like, oh, let's kind of wait and see. But now it really looks like this is pretty much off the table, regardless of the ultimatum. And then, I was reading, of course, reports that they met this afternoon and, they had a good conversation, whatever. So I think Trump has done just enough to basically prevent Pence from really kind of pushing this. And I don't know that he would have necessarily anyways. That kind of anger that you saw on the floor the night that this occurred has seemingly dissipated, and you have all of these Republicans trying to just basically brush this coup under the rug. So I feel like we're going to end up in our next place, which is where we're going to be talking about impeachment.
I just want to let the right honorable senator from Massachusetts know that I did want to murder you last week, but let's just let bygones be bygones, dear sir, because we have real work to do now to unite the country.
Yeah, well, and there was that one, who was it, House or Senate, Cicilline, who was getting the threatening phone calls, basically that if they further resisted this or voted for impeachment or tried to remove him, that it would start a civil war, and it was a whole lot of profanity and whatever. But these are the kinds of things people are dealing with at this particular moment. And I just don't see enough GOP that are really like forcefully coming out, aside from maybe Mitt Romney and, one other person, that have really forcefully come out and said, yeah, we need to remove him. We need to get him out of here because they've done so much to enable it for the last 4 years. Why stop now?
Right. My understanding is that Mike Pence and Donald Trump talked for the first time since Mike Pence was in a bunker wondering if he was going to die, literally.
Yeah, and he never, the president never bothered to check on him, never bothered to check on his family. I mean, that's how little respect, I should say, that he has for you and how little you actually mean to him from the 4 years that you've basically kissed his ass and enabled him.
I could just imagine that guy like, hi.
Yeah.
So, how you doing, Mike? We gonna go golfing this weekend? I don't think so. You're not really sore. You're not really sore about that whole running for your life thing, are you? That wasn't my fault. It was Antifa.
Yeah, it was always Antifa. Or, calling him in the bunker and asking him if he can persuade a few more senators to object.
Mike, I just want to know, if you survive this and they go to impeach and you're in charge, which side are you going to vote?
Yeah, whose side are you on?
Mike, are you there? You hung up. That's okay. He's wandering the halls right now, Jennifer, looking for a tweet.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
All right, we're going to turn it over to you. Let's for the impeachment update. This is insanity that we're talking about this, but give us the impeachment update.
It's so historic. He would be the only president in history to ever face impeachment a second time. So they drew up articles of impeachment today for incitement of insurrection. After giving Pence the 24 hours, you either enact the 25th Amendment or we're going for impeachment. As of now, it's got 211 Democratic co-sponsors. Basically, they're stating Trump gravely endangered the security of the United States, which he did because he egged on a coup to overthrow the government and basically install himself as dictator. So the vote is very likely on Wednesday. Last night I heard it's going to be at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, which would be 6 or 7 here. And then, of course, McConnell says he will not call for a session of the Senate until 1/19/21, which is the day before inauguration. And there's a 24-hour required waiting period once articles of impeachment are handed to the Senate before they can vote on the matter. And so that would be at 1 p.m. on 1/20/21, 1 hour after Trump is no longer president, depending on what happens with potential insurrection number 2, 3, 4, 5, or 7. Schumer can call the Senate overriding McConnell if it is a national emergency, and insurrections with threats of violence on 1/17, 1/19, and 1/20, and Trump declaration of a state of emergency in DC really adds fuels to further flame this, raging fire within these far right. I said white. It was like a Freudian slip. Sorry.
Great Freudian slip, Jennifer. It's a fabulous one.
Far right extremist groups.
It is interesting when I heard that Schumer has this capacity. And they're going all the way, right? They're going for insurrection for Donald Trump. By the way, will be the first president in American history to be impeached twice.
What? Yep.
He will be the third. It will be a fourth impeachment in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Same.
We've picked some real winners since I was born. I got to tell you, maybe I'd get back to that whole deep state thing. It's all my fault.
It is your fault. That and COVID.
I'm not old enough to know to remember number one, but I was alive at the time. So I'm referring to Nixon's impeachment. Y'all. With that, it is interesting though that the national emergency, or I should say, the state of emergency, is declared in Washington D.C., which would add some teeth to Schumer's argument that if the national capital is under threat of essentially being overthrown, isn't that then tantamount to a national emergency? In addition to that, you have the FBI that has alerted all 50 states that the Boogaloo Boys are coming on the 17th to overthrow the government, for a lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's definitely I think there's a case to be made for a state of emergency. And I don't understand why they're so, after everything that happened and the danger he put them in, why they're so unwilling to make him pay any real consequences for his actions. I mean, that just shows to me how desperate these Republicans are to stay in positions of power.
We had talked about this on Thursday, and we had talked about the beer hall putsch in Germany in 1923. If you're not familiar with your world history of the early 1900s, Adolf Hitler started screaming and yelling in the beer halls of Munich in 1919. And him and about 2,000 of his buddies showed up in Munich in 1923 with a big plan to overthrow the German government.
Yep.
And install this nationalist, fascist regime where he would be in charge. And the words disaster come to mind. They actually didn't even get as close as the insurrectionists got in Washington, D.C. Hitler was kind of screwed by a number of people for the interest of simplicity. He was arrested. Several of his closest allies were wounded. Some people were actually shot in gunfire that broke out in all of this. He was sentenced to prison, but he became a cause celeb. I think he served 9 months of his term. That's it. He basically got if you've ever seen the movie Goodfellas, when they're in prison and it's like they're getting the lobsters and stuff, and they have just like their own area they were living in. Yeah, that's kind of like the treatment he got. And he wrote Mein Kampf. He got out and he was legally elected chancellor in 1933, and the rest becomes awful history.
Exactly. And so I think if they're smart, and I hope this impeachment goes through, they make it so that he cannot hold federal office again, because this is not going to be, if he comes back again, he's coming back to stay.
Yeah. And the other thing we had talked about, Jennifer, on Thursday is it may not be Donald Trump, but it could be somebody like Josh Hawley, who I think is one of the most dangerous men in America now.
Exactly. And I know several people that share your sentiments. He's embodies everything that Trump stands for with just enough, I guess, intellect and charisma to be far more dangerous. Completely
agree. All right, we're going to move on to resignations, because this is all like today, malcontents. This is all today. Mm-hmm. This is crazy. Chad Wolf, acting Secretary of Homeland Defense, has resigned. He had planned to stay through to the end. He initially even said, I'm sticking around after all the crap happened. There are some questions on Chad Wolf's involvement or non-involvement in kind of like, yeah, let you guys kind of do your thing. Okay, look, maybe it's getting a little more crazy than what I thought. I'll get involved. He demanded that Donald Trump issue a strong statement on Thursday condemning everything that happened for the interest of the stability of the country. And of course, as we know, Donald Trump probably said to him, "You fired," which is probably why he's resigned. So he submitted his resignation, and it was like basically, "I'm resigning, kiss my ass, I'm out the door."
Mm-hmm. Yep. And this was before the declared state of emergency. So,
that's right. I forgot that point. The state of emergency was declared right before he resigned. So,
yep.
Did Donald Trump declare the state of emergency, or is Chad Wolf looking at this and going, "Holy shit, it's going to be friggin' war on the 19th or 20th, and I don't want to go down as the guy who got the incoming president killed and ended up with the country in flames"?
Yeah, no, exactly. I have a real hard time believing that Donald Trump, out of his own volition, declared a state of emergency or even approved it.
Because I'm going to say it again, malcontents. If you thought last week, Wednesday, it's like, oh, okay, because I've seen a lot of people on Facebook. It's like, oh, okay, they got it out of their system. It's all better now. No, you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
You're not. So, but I'm not surprised that things were quiet in Olympia today. Because I got to run the Chud clip.
These are Chud. Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
The Chuds are not necessarily very resilient, and the weather forecast was calling for 1.5 inches of rain in Olympia today. Not to mention they were facing 750 National Guard troops with real guns, and a whopping 20 brave patriots showed up today.
Wow. Were they afraid they were going to melt? Is that the problem?
I'm not the only journalist, by the way, that felt that way. There's a story of a journalist that was on Twitter or their thing where they were having a conversation with someone at a restaurant where they were like, "Oh, you're a journalist. Do you know what's going on?" and blah, blah. And I've had these conversations because I could really appreciate their story. And when they asked, do you think it'll be bad today? Their response was, "No, because it's raining and they don't like the rain." And sorry, Chuds. It's what we've seen. Jennifer, you have a big list of things about investigation and security issues.
Lots going on. So good old Lynn Wood is being investigated by the Secret Service for threats to Vice President Pence because his parlay was yanked down by Parler hours before the service was shut down. And this, I'm not going to repeat what he said. If you want to, I'm sure there's screenshots of it out there everywhere. But he basically called for Pence's death. So Ginny Thomas reportedly questioned by the FBI. This Ginny Thomas is the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. She has no association with Turning Point USA since 2019 and is not related to the 80-plus buses of right-wing protesters brought in. I'm reading off your notes, so I'm a little bit confused by that one. But this is actually Clarence Thomas' wife, and she's been an ardent Trump supporter, and she was out there on Twitter, spouting that same kind of crazy conspiracy theory stuff about the election, and people needed to get up there and fight. So now she's getting questioned for some of the statements that she made. So then we have Captain Emily Rainey, U.S. Army Special Forces PsyOps, is under investigation for her actions, including her claims of organizing 100 from Fort Bragg to go to Washington, D.C. Rainey already received a career-ending reprimand over summer for her extreme right-wing activity and will be removed from the military next month. That's right, people. Actions have consequences. And the Department of Defense has up to 25 are under investigation for terrorism, and some are soldiers that would indicate that the Patriot Act could be coming down on key civilian players in the insurrection. I almost said resurrection. It's been a week, and it's only Monday?
It's only Monday. Again, This is all Monday malcontents. We're not like trying to milk news between. This is all today. The one that jumps that story actually, Department of Defense 25 came out late Sunday night, so it was Monday on the East Coast when it came out. So I am stretching it by a couple hours. This one jumps out at me, and I gotta say, as much as I'm put the hammer down, this one worries me a little bit. That the Department of Defense is at least implying that they are investigating civilians, because initially what they said, it was 25 and up to 25 troops, which in itself is horrifying. But then they walked it back and said some are troops. And so then I'm left to go, well, wait a minute. Then if they're not troops, then who are they? And then now I have lots of questions. Are they Department of Defense contractors, and would they fall under the purvey of that? Patriot Act 2 does allow the government to declare an American citizen an enemy combatant and try them in a military tribunal. It is something I have been completely against. I was against Patriot Act 1. I was against Patriot Act 2. And there are already mechanisms in place to do this. So, Jennifer, it's a little worrying to me, to be candid. What's going on here with this story?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, there's lots of worrying things in this list. The fact that the wife of a Supreme Court justice is being questioned by the FBI is, also that's mind blowing to me, because she was out there right before that insurrection just saying some crazy stuff on Twitter, which isn't necessarily unlike her, but boy, yeah.
She was either a vice chairwoman or on the board of directors for Turning Point USA, an organization that has been accused of taking foreign money and paying foreign marketing agencies to essentially run bots and misinformation campaigns. Katie, Katie, Black Bloc Katie, people in the Seattle area know who I'm talking about. She was complaining how she lost 17,000 followers overnight on Twitter. Two police officers dead, 3 other killed, nation's completely in turmoil. Her beloved dear leader up for 25th Amendment or impeachment. Everything's embattled, and she's worried about her 17,000 followers. And I must live in China because where did they all go?
Oh, tragic. Poor gal.
You know where they went? They didn't exist. They were bots. They were fake accounts. They were dangerous. If your followers are QAnon, neo-Nazis, and Proud Boys, and their accounts get deleted, and you're hanging out with the wrong people, Katie. Davis Court. You're hanging out with the wrong people. Katie, by the way, Jennifer, she was in Washington, D.C. She was bragging about it on her tweets.
Yeah, that's really something I'd want to be bragging about. Look what's happened to the other people that have openly bragged about it in social media.
If people are wondering about the 80-plus buses, there was a tweet by Charlie Kirk. And Charlie Kirk claims that Turning Point USA was bringing in over 80 busloads of protesters to Washington, D.C. The projection here, Jennifer, is amazing, because how many years have we heard about, the left uses paid protesters from George Soros, and I saw this bus and that bus and this. 80 buses, 64 to 5,200 people if you do the math.
That's insane. Insane. I don't even know what to do. Like, there's so much stuff on this list that we still have to cover. This is just an insane amount of news that has come out in the last 24 hours. Insane.
It is. And I will try and speed it up here. We will stop beating that one into the ground. Let me just do a little quick pause for the cause. If you like what you're hearing, if you like what's going on here, I'm just going to say a real quick thanks to our patrons. And the other thing I just want to say is our mods and admins are paid in heart. So if you like what you're seeing, if you like what's going on, if you appreciate the hard work that they're doing in their moderation, please spam those hearts on Facebook, Twitter, and Periscope. If you're on Twitch or YouTube, you can just maybe do a long line of hearts or go, love you mods. All right, my half of the story. Police, fire, and EMS fallout. I have this huge list. We talked about Seattle. The two that have been identified as a husband and wife team that we know about, but then Chief Diaz expanded that to several. 2 Washington, D.C. police officers, Jennifer, they're on leave, and 17 more, according to CNN, under investigation. Philadelphia, 1 police officer has been reassigned.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to be involved in an armed insurrection and then come back to work and be like, we're giving you a new job.
Yeah. Still paid. Going somewhere else.
Police officers suspended with pay in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, for involvement in the government insurrection, according to the Capital Gazette. Capital Gazette used those words. They're suspended with pay. It's just stunning. Rocky Mount, Virginia, suspended 2 officers, according to Reuters, for their action. Going to try and channel my inner Keith Olbermann. Oh, I'm getting better at that. New York City Fire Department has handed information over to the FBI for an undisclosed number of firefighters, per Reuters. Sanford Fire Department in Florida, 1 firefighter placed on leave for their involvement. FBI says hundreds are under investigation. When we went to air tonight, the arrest number I saw was at 96. Case in point, when truly peaceful protesters in 2018 were protesting against the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh. And by the way, Steve at Freight Broker, they never stormed the Capitol, you asshole. Stop spreading misinformation, you chud piece of...
You're not the same. I'm an American. You're a sick asshole.
Piece of garbage. Steve, Freight Broker. They never stormed. Over 100 people, Jennifer, were arrested for that one. So we still haven't caught, and that was all mostly women protesting reproductive rights because, white men in power are afraid of the almighty uterus.
Yes, they are.
FBI is offering $50,000 reward to identify the persons who set the pipe bombs outside of the Democratic and Republican national headquarters. And finally, the Secret Service vows there will be robust security at Biden's inauguration. However, Joe Biden already expressed back in December that he didn't have a lot of faith in the Secret Service because a bunch of Trump loyalists have been installed in there, and he wanted to essentially be able to handpick his Secret Service team. Not fully unusual for an incoming president, but the level of concern and the level of staffing changes he wanted to make was really significant, enough to essentially make news.
Wow. Yeah, well, I don't blame him, especially now. I mean, now I feel like it should be mandatory that he gets to do that.
All right, Jennifer, you've got other fallout because
I feel like you don't want to do
this
this
is
just
like 2 pages.
Yes. So Trump ally Bill Belichick, and I know you're a Patriots fan, not like Patriots like 3%ers, but you know, the football team, said no thanks to Trump's announcement of giving him a Medal of Freedom this Thursday. In a statement, Belichick said he has a great reverence for democracy. Ooh, burn, Belichick.
All right,
Melania
so it is a bird on Bill Belichick's part. I will just jump in here because, yes, I'm a New England Patriots fan. I was born in the Boston area. It's in the water there. I love all Boston sports teams. I mean, let's face the facts here. This was meant to be a distraction, and this was like Trump, like going through his Rolodex and like, who are my buddies that might still pick up the phone?
Yeah, exactly. Who can I give a Medal of Freedom to? Yeah.
I wonder if he would have asked him to use his Twitter.
Probably. I need to send out a message, Bill, real quick. I'll give you this medal and send out a tweet.
Just one tweet. Could you just open up the app and let me smell your phone? All right, keep going.
Okay, so poor Melania. She wrote a statement and tried to position herself as the victim of the insurrection. Poor woman, with people gossiping about her. It's terrible when you're married to a wannabe dictator and you know you hate Christmas and things. In her statement, she lists the domestic terrorists killed first over the 2 officers that died. Colorado freshman rep Lauren Boebert is facing calls for resignation for tweeting out tactical information in real time on the location of the House and Speaker Pelosi on Wednesday. Wow.
What an American.
Wow. Yeah. Whew. Okay. Nancy Pelosi has strongly suggested she will use the 14th Amendment on key architects of the insurrection. Please
I wonder if Lauren Boebert is on that list.
I would think so, and I hope Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz are on there too. Rudy Giuliani is under investigation by the New York Bar Association. I read that first thing when I woke up this morning. I thought that was hilarious. Lindsey Powell appears to know when to shut up. Lindsey Graham was accosted by angry Trump supporters at Reagan Airport, calling him a traitor, making threats. Graham already had a security detail who opted to move him from the gates. That video is... I don't feel bad for him. That's all I can say. I feel like he kind of
actions have consequences?
Actions have consequences, people. Congressman Correa was accosted at Dulles Airport on Thursday by Trump supporters who threatened him. The Democrat says police were slow to respond and didn't take any information down of anyone who threatened him. Go figure.
Oh my goodness, Jennifer, as we're so fond of saying here, some of those who work forces.
Yes, they're the same that burn crosses. Multiple people were caught on video being thrown off flights over the weekend. And the videos are, I'm sorry, if you need a good laugh, watch the videos. This was not for being added to do not fly list. This was for ill behavior in boarding areas or on the plane spouting anti-government rhetoric, refusing to wear masks, or just being chuds.
These are chuds.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers.
Do you want to come? Oh.
Yeah, so if you go on Twitter, there's all these things, right? On like, here's a person, they're being kicked off the plane because they're on the no-fly list, and what we've learned now that we've gone into Monday. Oh, we have dog cam, everybody.
Yeah.
I realized that Jennifer's camera, I meant to say that earlier. We are very aware that Jennifer's camera is like at 1 frame per minute tonight, and it's just like watching still images of her. There's nothing we can do. So sorry.
It was super awesome, and I was in my nose, and it got stuck there.
So it turns out none of them actually are on no-fly lists. It's just they were being total assholes, and this is why they were kicked off flight. The one that was like, they called me a terrorist. It was like, yes. By the way, your Republican congressman, they're calling you terrorist too, buddy. So, all right. We're going to put on our tinfoil hat a little bit. Are you receiving me? Are you coming in?
Oh, yeah.
We got some rabbit holes to go down. Now, I want to be really clear. I'm not like going Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I think everybody's seen. I didn't have time to grab that clip. I wanted to like play that clip of him with the whole thing in the background. I'm not, because first of all, you don't need to have like the lines here with this. This is like a straight line. And we also know from the Goodman video, Officer Goodman, ironically named, or paradox, would be a paradox? Or
Yes.
irony?
Irony.
Malcontents, what do you think? Paradox or irony? Officer Goodman, who is actually doing something good. Capitol Police Officer Howard Liebengood died of suicide on Sunday. Full stop. We always do this whenever we talk about suicide on the show, and I always do this little bit here. Suicide's a very, very serious topic. And if you are feeling suicidal, if you are having suicidal thoughts, there is help. And if one of the mods or admins can put up this phone number as I read it off, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is available 24 hours a day. That phone number is 1-800-273-8255, 800-273-8255. If you have suicidal ideology, if you are ideation, if you are feeling suicidal, there is help. And suicide is not the answer. And I say that as a survivor. Don't make the call, reach out for help. Help is out there for you. And also the other thing is, Howard Liebengood was a human being. He was a police officer. And he definitely was feeling the weight of something when he decided to take his own life on Sunday. Liebengood was attached to the U.S. Senate. He reported to the current U.S. Sergeant or Arms, or actually no longer the current, sir, because Michael Stengler at the time of the insurrection was the Sergeant of Arms. And on the very next day, Mitch McConnell asked for his resignation. I mean, of what I know about Mitch, I know he kind of talks like this and stuff, but I don't think Mitch asked nicely, right? I'm pretty sure that Mitch was like, I want your happy ass to resign. The other thing we know that Officer Goodman exposed is that the Senate chamber was literally undefended, doors open, with senators in it as the mob reached the doors. It's undeniable. Here's the connection. Liebengood is the son of Howard S. Liebengood. Well, who's Howard S. Liebengood? Howard S. Liebengood was Senate Sergeant of Arms. He died in 2005 of a heart attack in 2005. I take that back. It is a little bit of a rabbit hole for me with all of those connections and his position of being attached to the Senate and the absolute failure of the Sergeant at Arms to protect anybody in his charge. And that's why I will definitely say it's a rabbit hole. But Jennifer, it's one of these things. It's like if it quacks like a duck, if it waddles like a duck, if it swims like a duck, what's the connection there?
I know. Whew. There's a lot of rabbit holes coming out of this.
You have another rabbit hole. This is your rabbit hole now.
Oh, get ready for this. Had to bring in a dog. So official petitions are some of your notes are a little wonky, so I'm going to try and read into it. Official positions of they didn't think it would be this bad or didn't want to have bad optics are not holding up. Now that I read that as a whole sentence, it reads just fine. So that's, I think, referring to the not bringing in additional forces to reinforce when they knew this coup was coming, because plans were out in the open for weeks on Telegram, 4chan, and more. As reported last week in Business Insider. Yeah. I mean, for God's sake, they had shirts that said January 6th, 2021.
We saw them. We were reading them. We were like, holy shit.
Yeah. So it's not like it wasn't out there. As reported last week in Business Insider, foreign intelligence agencies are advising their governments this was a multi-agency coup attempt in the United States. And I read that article and like my mouth was open the entire time, because this was just not insurrectionists that were, coming because they were disgruntled and, all Trump supporters. There were actually, they believe, insiders within government agencies helping to support this coup. Requests to the Pentagon for National Guard support were denied, ignored, and even delayed as the Capitol was overrun. I think I was reading something today that it was delayed for up to 6 hours. Insurrectionists had intimate knowledge of the Capitol building and were able to find unmarked offices and facilities. And that's the alarming part, because I was watching an interview with somebody today who said that they came and vandalized his office, but his office is basically hidden. You would have to have explicit directions to know how to get there. So the fear that this is, internal and, is a multi-agency coordinated effort to basically install a dictator is absolutely stunning.
Boston 1973 says they love your dog. I just thought I would relay that comment over to you.
Well, thank you. I kind of like her too.
Even if she is Mexican and potentially an illegal alien. We don't know. Is that a documented dog, Jennifer?
Sure. Yeah, she has papers.
All right, Malcontents, that's it. We're actually at 90 minutes on the dot, and that includes fucking up the first 10 or 12 minutes of the show and having to start over from the beginning. Mods and admins, this is the point. If there's questions, there's been a lot of comments tonight, and I know we had a lot of eyeballs and a lot of new people. Thank you for joining us. We hope you come back. If you jumped into the show late, it's okay. It'll be available on demand, and we'll have a rebroadcast tomorrow at 1 p.m. So for people who aren't watching now because they had to go to bed, you can watch it tomorrow when we do the rebroadcast. You're getting lots of comments on the dogs. They love the dogs. I'm just trying to see if we have any questions for no dog is illegal. Wait a minute. Jerks who've continued to this very end. How would this reshape Congress? Here's a question. I'm going to turn this over to our historian, Jennifer. This one's for you. If the 14th Amendment were used to clear Congress of these Republican jerks, I'm just reading the words, malcontents, who've continued to toe the presidential line to the very end, how would that reshape Congress? I.e., would the line of succession result in any non-Republicans replacing them? What happens next? Predictions?
I don't really know. So the 14th Amendment, of course, was, Reconstruction era to basically remove people that were not in line with Reconstruction. This was part of the, whole radical Reconstruction thing. And I don't know, there were a couple of replacements, but I don't necessarily know how that would work now. And I don't know if they know how it would work is the problem. Are we going to, basically hold new elections? It's not like you can just be like, okay, we're going to remove you. And then, the Democrat that lost to you is immediately going to assume your office. So I think that's a pretty complicated question just because it hasn't been exercised much historically. And it was really put in place for a very particular effort in the, latter half of the 19th century. And that was to ensure that Reconstruction was implemented smoothly in the South, which it was not.
Let's see. Please talk about went one on in Portland at Pal's bookstore today. I really don't know, Joyce, a whole lot about that. What I do know is that protesters were there today because Pal is selling Andy Ngo's Pack of Lies wrapped in a pretty little cover. The fact that Andy was actually capable of writing a book is actually pretty impressive to me. But they're protesting the sale of Andy Ngo's book at Pal's. That's the sum total of what I know. If you're asking my viewpoint on it, look, he's a chud. He's an awful, despicable human being. When he's lying, when he's either typing or his lips are moving. But his First Amendment. He has a right to sell his book, and I know some people are going to disagree with that, but it is different than sending out tweets basically going death to the government. So you can make me your overlord and leader who will worship and adore you, not versus here is my crappy book that I wrote. That's my view.
Yeah, I had read that his book was coming out and there were videos of people going to protest.
Shelley's asking the question back on the 14th Amendment. Wouldn't each state reappoint according to their state laws? As I understand, senators are appointed, but Congress critters are elected.
Again, like I said, here, let me look real quick and see how many times it's even been enacted. I'm not sure.
Fox Phoenix brings up a good point. He has every right to write it, but that doesn't mean that someone has to publish it, which is very, very true. Of course, we do live in an age right now where somebody can very easily self-publish on a platform like Amazon. And if you go into the bowels of Amazon on some of the self-published digital books that are available, there is some pretty reprehensible stuff that is available on Amazon. So, I mean, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's like 1868. Let's see. Here we go. Let me look it up. Because I can't recall. I mean, it's put in place because of Reconstruction, but I can't recall if it's ever actually been implemented and if they've ever actually.
I think they use it on 11 Congress critters and 3 senators, but Jennifer, don't hold that to me.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how that would work. And this is like, 19th century stuff. So I wish I had a better answer for you. If I can look up and find something concrete, historical, I will share it with you, David, and then maybe you can put it up somewhere.
Oh my goodness, is Barb from Ground Level News watching us? I just saw Ground Level News. Hi, Barb. We love you. Barb, if you are not following, look, I'm going to do a huge pimp out for Ground Level News. If you are not following Ground Level News on Facebook, Ground Level News, follow. Barb is one of the best activist streamers in the country. And if you're like, what the hell's an activist streamer? I'll be real quick here. 3 types of streamers. Number 1, journalistic streamers. Hi. Number 2, like video documentary and videographer type streamers. Soul Luna, I think, is a great example. They let the camera do the talking. They don't do a lot of narration, but they're very good at painting a picture and let the camera do the talking. And then the third one is activist streamers. Activist streamers are getting in the face of police officers. They're challenging there directly. And Barb is like the Jedi master of activist streaming. She really is amazing, and she is a tireless advocate of the unhomed. We love Barb. Please follow Ground Level News and amplify the work she's doing.
Okay, so I got some information on the 14th Amendment.
Drop it on us.
Congress doesn't do it, has done it a handful of times, and it was the outbreak of the Civil War for supporting the Confederacy. No longer has ever been dismissed using the 14th Amendment since its ratification after the war. So that third section of the 14th Amendment that was implemented and the amendment after the Civil War, it has not been utilized. There have been people that have been removed from office, but not using the 14th Amendment in particular.
Oh, interesting. See you. That's why I said I'm going to defer to you.
Yeah. So it's uncharted territory. So
You mean a sitting president trying to destroy the legislative branch to make himself dictator has never happened before?
Not here, and not with the assistance of like internal assistance.
My wife and I were having a conversation a couple of nights ago, Jennifer. We were listing off countries that we have visited that have more stable governments than the United States right now.
I'm sure it was a lot, depending on how many places you've been.
South Africa, Namibia, Nicaragua, Mexico.
I have, a field in Latin America.
Oh my God, it's just
countries would be more
awful.
men.
We're running close down to the end of the show here. I am going to run a plug, Jennifer, because we haven't done it yet, for Can You Hear Us?
Okay.
Initially kind of came in and, said, hey, we're going to have to start moving people. And then a couple other people came in and we were like...
Police to be held accountable for their actions. We're not going without no justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
Can You Hear Us is a documentary that's been prepared by Malcontent News. It highlights the events that have happened in Seattle from June 1 to July 4 and tells the true story of CHOP, the before, the during, and the after, and how we end up with summer season all year. If you want to watch that, it will be made available in February of 2021. However, if you want a early viewing of Can You Hear Us, we're going to be making that available to all of our patrons as a benefit in January, and it will be released to all of our patrons on January 25th. Documentary is more than a half an hour, contains footage that has never been seen before, and also revisits a number of events that we covered in the field, good, bad, and ugly. So give us a like, give us a follow, give us a share. And I also want to go ahead and say, Shannon, thank you for your generosity tonight, and thank you for helping us keep the lights on here at Malcontent News. And with that said, I think we've kind of come to the end of a very long show.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what Thursday is going to bring. I just don't.
Hopefully I won't be frozen in time every 30 seconds. That would be great.
Yeah. It's been like watching you on a slideshow. The thing, Jennifer, just has been good about it. It's not if you were moving every 3 seconds, right, it would be really horrible. It really has been like you move about once every 30 seconds. So it's very, very watchable. So, all right, Malcontent, with that, thank you so much for tuning in. Malcontentnews.com. You can go there, bookmark the site. You can download the Google News app. You can download Google News on your mobile device, both Apple and Android. And in Google News, do a search for Malcontent News. Yeah, that's right. We're a approved news agency on Google News, and you can actually follow us on the app. Like, follow, share on the channel of your choice, and we will see you on Thursday for the next happy hour. And so with that, Jennifer, have a good night.
You as well. Good night, everybody.
Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile. You're the Malcontent.
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
Antifa, fuck you!
You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.